she was getting, she had one little funny tweet, you know, as she's sitting there being one of the central nodes on the internet for information about Egypt, some guy who had seen her on Bill Maher sent her a tweet asking her if he could feature her on a sort of a you know, some obscene website for, you know, Woman of the Month or something like this. So it's a completely open field. She immediately blocked the pervert, you know, because it was very clear that that was not what she's on here for, but you can block those sorts of things. But it's a very public kind of medium, and you can see very quickly in these little snippets of information if someone has an agenda. If they're always on there, coming on, you see their name come up time and time again, defending a certain point of view, you kind of it's an interesting cognitive process that you learn to recognize them. You know who they are. If you think they're interesting, you can watch them. If not, you can block them, et cetera, et cetera. So back to this story of the whole media complex. The internet clearly has minority penetration in the Middle East. And again, of all these people that are using it, it's mostly little boys playing video games. It's not, you know, it's even worse than the numbers would suggest. So the primary use of the internet cafes that you hear about in neighborhoods all over the Middle East, because most families don't have home internet or a personal computer, but there are these neighborhood cafes. Dominant use of that is little boys playing very bloody video games that, you know, they shouldn't be able to play, but, you know, they do. The other side of this is television. Okay, so that has much, much wider penetration into all Middle Eastern societies. So you're probably, you know, talking about 80 or more % penetration with the traditional television, state-based, and now today with transnational satellite television. I'm sure Mark can describe this a lot more colorfully than I can, but you go to any Middle Eastern or third world city today, and you'll see this when you go to Syria, and the rooftop real estate is just, you know, completely filled and covered with satellite dishes. Any, you know, any family that aspires to middle class or even working class status has access to satellite TV. And for those few, and it's probably a minority of households that don't have access to satellite TV, you know, there are the cafes, and, you know, the Hakawati that Mark was talking about was replaced in the 20s by the phonograph, which of course was replaced by state TV through much of the 20th century. And of course now no self-respecting person gets their news from the state-run media services. Everybody watches satellite TV, and Al Jazeera in particular. Yeah.
In Iran, there are blocks on satellite communication.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to be watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've developed a whole system where they put up fake covers
Mm-hmm.
for
bushes.
For air conditioning
Yeah.
covers.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll put them on the roofs and take around to block it, and they've done all of these things.
Camouflaging, yes. And people, and this is, you know, it's a really inspiring kind of aspect of life in the Middle East. You know, we watched this in the 1990s when this satellite technology with these cheap Korean-made receivers began to be available widely. And in Damascus today, if we get a chance to go there, there's even an old traditional lane in one of the old traditional neighborhoods, which is the satellite, the market for satellites, where you'll see people recycling and making, you know, most people, again, would just buy a new one, but there is a place where you can refurbish and sort of make old ones. And the knowledge of how to use these things is so much wider and deeper than it is, say, in our society. So again, I have my little shtick about how I don't know how to use a computer, and it's pretty much true, and I can usually find someone to help me do it. In the Middle East, it seems like every household or every floor has someone who would know from scratch how to program your receiver. You don't have a subscription service. You don't sit around all day waiting for a repairman to come in. You don't pay anyone except for the one-time service of getting you set up if you don't have a male relative who already knows how to do it and has probably already done it while I've been talking. You know, it's that kind of environment where this is commonplace knowledge. What for us is knowledge we have to pay for. We have to interact with a very frustrating monopoly to get. That's out there. That's free market information.
Yeah, I guess I was a little confused because I don't follow Twitter.
Right.
So you have to be with your cell phone on the internet application to get it, or does it
well, here's where it lives. Yeah. Where does Twitter live? I mean, that might be the basic way to put it. Clearly, we can access it from a regular computer. You just go to the Twitter website, and if you go without even signing in, without looking for anyone to follow, you will get the most popular tweets. And these are things from celebrities, you know, Hollywood types, Sarah Palin, you know, we've all heard about Sarah Palin tweeting, people who have these very large celebrity followings, which is really interesting because one day, you know, I was sitting on there, you know, and these are all Middle Eastern political activists that I'm watching. And then it was the Egypt tag that day, comes a message from Danny DeVito saying, you know, Danny DeVito salutes the Egyptian revolution. And you're like, wow, well, gosh, I wouldn't have thought, you know, that we were in the same stream there. Well, I looked, and Danny DeVito has, you know, something like 1 million, I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, at least hundreds of thousands of followers for some reason. So instantly, just because you've had an @Danny DeVito sign, you can answer him back with that @Danny DeVito sign. Just look up Danny DeVito, and just without even the @ sign. Yeah, see, yeah, here he is, Danny DeVito, and follow, go down a little bit. Maybe this is a different Danny DeVito. Isn't that his name, the actor? Yeah. Just look up DeVito and see what you get while I'm talking. So instantly, just because you happened to be there when he stopped by, if you were to answer him back, you have access to his network of hundreds of thousands of, yeah, look, here he is, Danny DeVito, 1,055,000 followers. And because, you know, and so you would see this periodically as sort of, you know, people from the outside world stopping into these hashtags, you know, basically to say, you know, go Egypt or things like that. And because they're there, someone you wouldn't have thought of, so yeah, I don't know whether I did, but you could answer back and say, yeah, go Danny DeVito. For more information about the Egyptian revolution, you know, and then put in that information there as well. And you have a momentary access to that universe of other people. It's really cool. Okay, so it's just like, it's a free-for-all. So it's me with the 67 sources that I follow and the 44 poor schmucks, most of whom are, you know, spammers who follow me. But we're all in there in the same pool with Danny DeVito and Sarah Palin and, you know, millions and millions of other people. So it's really kind of cool.
Best post yet.
Which one? Miss your mom. Yeah. So, you know, if you were to make a study of Danny, you know, so you could go in, you could just sit on Danny DeVito's just the way, you know, you could sit on mine if that was.
So somebody would put Danny DeVito, it says they love Friday. I mean, somebody's got the time that they think that's what they do.
It's an amazing time waster if that's what you want to use it for. But if you mobilize it in the right way, it's also this incredible communicative tool. Yeah. I haven't been in this world long enough to know that. But it seems to me you have the choice. All right, and here's a little episode that I watched now in Twitter time an eternity ago, but you know, just last week. So when Lara Logan was sexually assaulted and raped in Egypt, a member of our community, you know, someone who's been here to talk and has a pretty considerable Twitter following, carelessly and very offensively, you know, not really understanding that his words were going out to thousands and thousands, that this was totally public. You know, he made some crack about, well, you know, since she was a warmonger and someone who in his view was a propagandist for the Iraq and Afghan wars, something to the effect, you know, that she deserved it, and wouldn't it be funny if Anderson Cooper had, and this went out, this you know, crude, offensive, horrifying thing went out to everybody. And the Twitter world, you know, of Muna al-Tahawi and of all these hashtags lit up, and people's responses were instantaneous, and he was fired from his job, okay? So, and this all took place in a period of like 4 hours, and now the story is basically forgotten. But what he tried to do, he went in, and he immediately, as the author of these tweets, had the ability to delete them from the record, but of course it was too late, because everybody knew, because it had reverberated through so many other tweets, through retweeting, through these hashtags, that the mere fact that he was able to delete, you know, when he realized what he had done, and when he realized that he had unleashed this firestorm against himself, you know, he tried to do damage control, but it was already too late, okay? He ended up leaving his post at New York University. You know, New York University came under pressure, and it was instant. This happened in a matter of hours, and then within 12 hours, it was all over, okay? He left on February 18th. He made apologies, you know, which most people were interested in, but not taken seriously. He was gone for, again, what seems like an eternity in Twitter time, and he came back on February 22nd, and, you know, that's the sort of the rhythm of this stuff, and now he's back again doing his postings, and he learned a big lesson. I mean, this was just, he realized what a stupid thing he had said, something that you would casually say in a regrettable aside to a friend, like she deserved it, or something like this, and it was everywhere. Mm-hmm, yeah.
On the editorial page.
Yeah, and we saw that, and I saw that happening in real time. And I was like, oh my God, I was going to write to him. I was going to say, do you know what you just said? Do you know where you just said it? You know, this is the most public forum on the globe right now. And again, if you have enemies out, you know, be very careful of what you say. So there's a reason why most of it is nonsensical, irrelevant garbage. But if you do say something that has news value or whatever, you know, it's everywhere.
So now he just tweets on Friday.
Yeah, and he took his picture off because he realized, you know, that his picture was implicating others, you know, all kinds of things. He went back up with a little egg. When you go on your basic, you'll get a colored egg. This one has a moving fly. It's very distracting. This is a Brazilian journalist that I've developed a relationship with, who has the most innovative thing. It's a fly crawling around, but it's very distracting. Yeah.
Because I've had a bug
No, that's his sign. So again, we wrote something about the Libyan planes that defected to Malta, and I was like, well, you know, this is something that interests us in SysMech. This could be very interesting to other people. We tweeted it out there to a list called Libya Arms, and surely enough, you find, you know, Brazilian journalists, you know, amateur military historians out there who you would never, ever would have found, who suddenly you're exchanging information with. So it's kind of what we imagined the internet might be like at the beginning of the internet age, but it hasn't been. And, you know, suddenly email looks like snail mail in this world. It takes a while to get used to it, kind of just